Hi guys, it's me, Miss Shawna. I am on my front porch and I thought I would read you a story for this evening. Look, Mr. Bear's here with me. Mr. Bear, can you say hi? He might bark because he barks at anytime he hears something. So the book I'm going to read tonight is about a dog, since Mr. Bear's here with me, and it's called Clarence and the Burglar. This is an old book because I think it might have been my book when I was a little girl, and my grandma and grandpa passed it down to me. It says it is copyright from 1973, so I think that it was in fact mine when I was little. Anyway, it's by Patricia Lambert, and Paul Galdone drew the pictures. Anybody know what kind of dog this is? Mr. Bear's a dorky, but this dog, it looks like a beagle to me. So, here, let's get started. My name is Pat Logan. My brother's name is Brian, and we have a dog named Clarence. I'll make sure I put the pictures close enough for you to see. Almost everybody on our street loves Clarence because he's so friendly. He never growls at anybody. He never growls at the Brundages. Let's do it this way a little bit. He never growls at the Harrises. He doesn't snarl at the mailman. He doesn't snarl at the milkman. He doesn't even snarl or growl at strangers. Some watchdog, says George Harris. George lives next door. He has a great big dog named Wolf. George and Wolf make fun of Clarence because Clarence never growls at anybody. Do you think dogs need to growl at people? Mr. Bear doesn't growl very often. Do you, Mr. Bear? And then you give a little growl. Hey, Mom, asked Brian, do you think there's something wrong with Clarence? No, Brian, says Mom. There's nothing wrong with Clarence. He's just friendly. Too friendly, says George. He'll never make a watchdog. I just wish he'd growl at you, Brian says. But Clarence just wags his tail. Well, Clarence may not be much of a watchdog, but he loves to play games. The two he loves the best are called fish and ball. When Clarence plays fish, he runs and gets his rubber fish. He bites fish until it squeaks. Then he drops it at your feet, and you're supposed to hide fish and let Clarence find it. Do you have a dog that likes to play fetch? When he plays ball, he drops his tennis ball into your lap, and you're supposed to throw it, so Clarence can run after it and fetch it back to you. Clarence tries to get everybody to play fish or ball with him. If you don't want to play games with him, do you know what Clarence does? He unties your shoelaces with his teeth. Darndest dog I ever saw, said Brian, and Clarence just wags his tail. There's something else that Clarence loves to do. He loves to watch TV. Every time our set is on, Clarence watches with Brian and me. He likes to watch cartoons. He likes cowboys and Indians. He even likes commercials. But he likes to watch football games most of all. Who else likes to watch football games? Any Saturday when Brian and his friends are watching football, Clarence is there in front of the TV watching with them. So Mom puts an old bedspread over a chair just for Clarence. Now he knows that that's his special chair, and that's where he sits when he's watching TV. Does your dog sit in a chair like this? He looks silly. Sometimes when all of us are out, Clarence goes next door to visit Mr. and Mrs. Brundage. If Clarence hears them playing their TV, he scratches on their door and they let him inside. He looks like a friendly guy. Then Clarence sits down in front of the TV with Mr. and Mrs. Brundage and watches football too. He even barks when State makes a touchdown, says Mr. Brundage. Mr. Brundage went to State. Darndest dog I ever saw, and Clarence just wags his tail. Now comes the part about the burglar. Because one Sunday night, Mom and Brian and I went downtown to the movies. We left Clarence burying a bone in the backyard. There must have been a night game on because Clarence went next door to watch TV with Mr. and Mrs. Brundage. Then, while our house was dark and empty, a burglar opened a window on the back porch. He crept into our dining room, and he began putting Mom's table silver into his sack. He looks like he has a mean face. Just then, the night game must have ended on TV because Clarence came home from the Brundages. I guess he must have scratched first at the back door. Then he came through the open window that the burglar had left open. Clarence hopped into the dining room. Inside, he stopped and sniffed. A stranger. Company. A new friend. Someone to play with. When he saw the burglar, he jumped up on him, wagging his tail. Then Clarence ran to find Fish and Ball. Clarence came back, first with Fish and then with the ball. He jumped up on the burglar's leg to say, "Let's play." He nudged Ball with his nose. He bit Fish until it squeaked. But the burglar was in a hurry and he didn't want to play. Clarence squeaked Fish again. He dropped the ball at the burglar's feet. The burglar still didn't want to play, so Clarence reached down and nipped first one shoelace and then the other, until both the burglar's shoes came untied. And I guess that's when we came home from the movies, because as soon as we walked into the house, we heard a terrible crash in the dining room. We rushed in and turned on the lights, and there was the burglar stretched out on the floor. He was knocked out cold. The sack of silver was beside him, and Clarence was standing on the burglar's chest, licking his face. Brian got a baseball bat and stood guard over the burglar. Mom went to the telephone and called the police. Brian looked at Fish and Ball. Then he looked at me and smiled. "Clarence must have tried to get him to play," I said. "Then he untied the burglar's shoes," said Brian. "And the man tripped on his own shoelaces and fell down," said Mom. "And now he's out like a light," said Brian. Just then George Harris knocked on our front door. Wolf was with him. "Hey, someone just robbed our house," said George. Wolf was asleep, or he'd have caught him. "Some watchdog," said Brian. "The guy's right here out cold on our dining room floor. Must be the same burglar. He tried to rob our house too. Only our watchdog, Clarence, was too smart for him. Weren't you, Clarence?" And Clarence just wagged his tail. Then we heard the sirens and the police came. Sergeant Murphy put handcuffs on the burglar. He sneaked in the porch window and Sergeant Murphy was patting Wolf. "And this big dog of yours knocked him to the floor, and the burglar was out colder than a mackerel." "Not that big dog, Sergeant," said Brian. "It's this little dog here. It was Clarence who caught him." "Well, I'll be," said Sergeant Murphy. "Some watchdog you got there. He's a regular hero, that Clarence." And he shook hands with Clarence. And the Brundages came over to find out what happened, and so did George's mom and dad. He's kind of a hero. Everybody's all excited about it. He looks pretty proud. The next day, Brian and Clarence and I had our names in the paper, and the headline said, "Pup Nabs Burglar." And there was a picture too, but Clarence's rear end was only a blur because he was wagging his tail so hard. The end. Mr. Bear, what did you think of the book? Can you say hi to everybody? Can you? Say, "I'll see you next time." Bye, everyone.